Good morning, India, and good evening, US. Welcome to PIC Adda of this month, that is August 2021. This is Dr. Sangeeta Kale, working as a professor and researcher at Defense Institute of Advanced Technology, which is a university funded by Ministry of Defense, and a Programs Committee member of Pune International Center. With me, on the panel, we have Dr. Amitav Malik and Dr. Vijay Kelkar, along with Mr. Abhay Vaidya. The details of Pune International Center is seen at its website, that is www.puneinternationalcenter.org. However, since we have some visitors today from the US, Pune International Center is basically a think tank of Pune, and it has got wide range of personalities, eminent personalities who are the members of PIC. PIC does multiple activities in which there are different lectures, conferences, seminars. We write policy papers. Also, we have social innovation kind of conferences, dialogues on national network. We work a lot on energy and environment also. Details can be seen, of course, at the website. Today, for this Adda, let me welcome the speaker of today, Dr. Archana Sudame. She is a co-founder, Science and Technology, Engineering or Mathematics, that is STEM, outside the box. She also handles college admissions and she's an advisor at the admission crew. Most importantly, also, she is a founder member of Pune International Center. With her, we also have her students on the panel, Apurva Turnadula, who is a co-founder and head of engineering at Viral Space. Kushal Chattopadhyay, he is a member of Harvard University. Dhruva Bhatt, who is a PhD student at Oxford University. And Stephen, who is a director and co-founder of Lumiere Education. Dr. Archana Sudame, along with her team, will share her ideas on education through her talk entitled How Young Minds Are Designing Their Own Future. Dr. Archana and her team has taken special efforts for this talk, and she is joining us from California at these odd late evening hours in the US. We really appreciate her efforts. I welcome her and her team to this wonderful platform of PIC. To introduce Dr. Archana, she is an educational advisor for higher education, STEM career consultant, and educational entrepreneur. She has worked till August 2010, from August 2010 to present. She is a founder and full-time educational advisor with Admission Crew, LLC. She has mentored more than 2,000 students with her families on an hourly or comprehensive basis as her college and career advisor. She has trained student mentors as well. January 2016 onwards, that is still today, she's a founder of STEM Outside the Box organization. She has explored novel ways to support original thinking and supported innovative science and social projects led by local youth. She has advocated for opportunities in STEM for underprivileged students. She has good and interesting research contributions, out of which two are associated with Pune International Center. In 2018, she has co-authored a paper on nurturing gifted and talented students in urban, rural, and tribal schools in India. In 2016, she has been a part of a national educational policy paper where she has put her recommendations for higher education in national policy on education. She has different professional memberships, for example, with National Association for College Admission Counseling, Western Association for College Admission Counseling, Higher Education Consultants Association. She's a member and a contributor there. She's also a founder member, as I mentioned before, for Pune International Center. Her other interests go in advising on founding K-12 schools, political campaigning for special interest groups, STEM education, educational awareness, environmental awareness and protection, and she is also interested in philosophy. With this brief introduction, I now request Dr. Archana to start her talk, please. Over to Dr. Archana.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kai, for that introduction and for all the logistics that went into organizing today's session. I'm extremely grateful to PIC President, Dr. Mashelkar, Vice President, Dr. Kelkar, Professor Malik, for, and other distinguished and dedicated members who have always been inspiring us. I also want to thank various representatives of various educational institutes who are attending today, my friends and family who are also attending today. Thank you so much. I especially want to thank our PIC staff, including Amresh and Kiran, for working out all these communications and logistics and the whole Zoom theme and organizing this so nicely. So let me now move on to my wonderful panelists, and let me start with the distinguished lady on the panel, Apurva Donadula. I was her college admission advisor in 2013. And like most of my students, she has kept in touch with me over the years. She has a bachelor in electrical engineering and computer science from Berkeley. And then she went for her master's in computer science at Stanford University, where she was a researcher in the Stanford Vision Lab. While at Stanford, Apurva and two of her classmates co-founded Viral Space, a startup that uses artificial intelligence and data-driven decisions for digital marketing and advertising. Apurva leads the engineering and AI development at Viral Space, and Viral Space was recently acquired by Smartly.io. The biggest thing is that Apurva is in the Forbes 30 under 30 list, so that's a huge achievement for marketing and advertising category in 2021. So I'm extremely proud of that. And then I come to the youngest member of my panel, Kushal Chattopadhyay, who just completed his 12th grade and is going to Harvard on Tuesday. So he's entering Harvard this 2021 fall. He'll be studying applied math and economics with a potential language citation in Japanese. And where Apurva was fond of depth, right from her high school days, Kushal explored all the breadths of different subjects. He's extremely interested in linguistics, urban economics, data science, and has learned multiple languages and has also actually invented his own language, not computer language, but speaking language. And he's an avid traveler, he's a hiker, and he's a hip hop enthusiast. One of my panelists is sick today and he cannot come, but Drew and Stephen are both my professional colleagues. They have provided opportunities for my students to grow. They are not my students, but my colleagues, and I especially. Oh, Stephen, good to see you. How are you doing?
Good, a little woozy, but okay. And so I might, if there are any questions that I think take a little too much mental space, I may pass to Dhruva, but thank you for having me and so excited to be here.
Good to see you. So both Drew and Stephen are here, and they are part of Lumiere Education, and Lumiere Education has a program, Lumiere Research Scholar, which is where many of my students go and are nurtured. So Drew is doing a PhD at Oxford University in the Department of International Development, and is one of the directors at Lumiere Research Scholar Program. He graduated from Harvard with a bachelor's degree in economics and from Stanford with an MPhil in international development as a Rhodes Scholar. So big deal there. His current research is on issues related to education, employment, and entrepreneurship. So very relevant to our discussion. Drew is joining us from Chennai. And on today's panel, he'll bring a lot of context because he's worked with students from India and has inspiring stories that he's going to share. And Stephen is the co-founder of Lumiere Education, also PhD student at Harvard Business School. And prior to joining Harvard Business, Stephen worked with McKinsey and Company across the US and China, as well as for the founding team of Vietnam's first liberal arts university, Fulbright University. Stephen's research and writing has been covered in The Economist, Harvard Business Review, and Washington Post. He's passionate about expanding research opportunities to wonderful students, bright minds like Apurva and Kushal. And Stephen has also graduated from Harvard with a degree in statistics. Now, Lumiere did not exist when Tushar and Apurva graduated, but these are self-motivated students and they keep on finding opportunities, and I'm so grateful for Dhruv and Stephen to create these opportunities for our students. So let's get started with the presentation. If we could progress to the next slide, please. All right, so who doesn't like Will Smith, right? I know I have at least one friend in the audience who loves him, and this one is for her. She's my co-author on 2 of the PIC papers. Hi, Namita. So especially when Will Smith is trying to distinguish between talents and skills, it's especially attractive, right? So as a college and career advisor, my first task is to believe in my students and their abilities, and asking parents to believe in the abilities of their children. The first step for me is to identify the students early, and such identification is always informal. We don't really take a lot of tests or anything. I rely on the information from teachers because recommendations come to us, counselors, parents, students themselves. Now, speaking with students, we can see if a student has deeper understanding of a subject matter and has done things beyond classroom or study curriculum since an early age. In case of Kushal and Apurva, they both had done that. Some students may not have those opportunities. And in that case, we look for their ability to think critically or solve complex problems. And some students are just outrightly completely academic. They have gone to the depths of mathematics and really done graduate school level work in some of these STEM subjects. So a lot of different type of students who come with gifts and talents, and some are socially savvy. They possess good communication skills, write beautifully. Their writing, reading, enthusiasm, reasoning is outstanding. And for gifted students, the identification can come in later through tests like GATE. Some students tell us their GATE scores, but we don't care about it. GATE is the formal, gifted and talented education program in the US here. So we don't care about it. Our way of identifying talent is literally by suspecting it first. And then, one of the things that I would do is forward that talent to my colleagues like Stephen and Dhruva and say, hey, okay, guys, you interview them and you figure out what would be a good match for them in terms of really exploring opportunities beyond classroom. So Stephen, my first question is to you, if you can take this. If not, Dhruv can take it. How do you identify talent and match students with mentors? What is your philosophy when you are matching students?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And so for us, so much of what we do is about having a mentor-student pair that is both academically a good fit, academically rigorous, but also interpersonally something that is inspiring for students. And so for us, when we think about matching, the first order thing that we think about is there going to be a content level fit between students and their mentor? And I think that's really important. We start with that as opposed to say personality or location, because perhaps this is the nerd inside me, but there's something really exciting about, for a student to be working with someone who's a deep expert in the field that you yourself are excited by, and to see someone that is doing that thing that you're interested in at a much deeper level. So we start with that. How do we get a match in terms of area of interest? Let's say it's astrophysics, for example. But then within that, the idea is, how can we help students be exposed to types of mentors that are similar to them, and also give an example of someone that they could relate to. And that's also important about how we try to recruit mentors, such that mentors are warm, they're caring, they represent a diversity of backgrounds. Many of our mentors in STEM, the ratio of our mentors versus the ratio of graduate students in the population, we try to have a much higher proportion of, and we do have a higher proportion of women. And maybe it's also a reflection of women being more natural or more willing to go out there and to give mentoring support. But whatever the reason, we also think that's important to represent diverse backgrounds. But for us, it really comes down to this idea of, can you match with someone who you think is doing something really cool, and that allows you to, and that is warm and caring. And so from there, the relationship builds from that level of kind of this shared nerdiness around something, and then also a shared commitment of the student to build something, the commitment of the mentor to guide them in that process.
Awesome, thank you so much. And can we progress to the next slide, please? So now, going with the same things, this is how Lumiere would match our students with their mentors. And every time my students come back to me, I have great feedback about um, automatically their interests match, but so do their personalities. So, gifted students, objectively speaking, we all feel that, okay, when we have a gifted student, it's all positive, it's all privilege for the gifted. But my experience tells me that giftedness is not always quantifiable that accurately, and it's not so much in black and white. There are many gray shades of giftedness. Fortunately, this particular chart by Dr. Betts and Dr. Neilhart summarizes it all. So gifted and talented students of all sorts have their own challenges, preferences, or quirks. When mentoring them, one size doesn't fit all, and that's what Stephen was saying. The idea is to encourage them, counsel them, from our side also to nudge them, sometimes just show them the options that are available, and they take off with it. In this slide, the type 6 is the most interesting students, and they may not be identified as gifted by the standard tests such as GATE, but they are extremely self-motivated. And you can clearly see this part because these are the young minds we are talking about today, and these are the people who are designing their own future. So Dr. Betts and Dr. Neilhart called them autonomous learners. I feel that these folks possess that growth mindset. They take on more challenges. They don't conform to school expectations. And these are the students who design their own future. I found both Apurva and Kushal to be autonomous learners. I will first ask Kushal this question. He constantly thought outside the box, and I would toss an idea and he would grab it and run with it. So it was an amazing experience mentoring him for 3 years before we came to a point where he was admitted into Harvard. So Kushal, can you speak about your high school journey and how you pursued your diverse passions from chemistry to CS to languages? How did you manage that?
Yeah, of course. So I think that the defining factor of, I guess, my high school experience was that I was really self-motivated to kind of pursue the different fields that I was interested in at the time. And I went to a public school for high school, so not a lot of resources, I guess, came to us. We would have to go out and search for those opportunities or make them ourselves. So that kind of motivated me to, I guess, find these opportunities and carve my own path through high school. So one example, like you mentioned, is my interest in chemistry, specifically biochemistry. I was very interested in pursuing biochemistry research in 9th and 10th grade. And I didn't really have that much resources at my disposal. So what I did was I was interested in working at a university lab where I could get hands-on kind of experience, but also one where I could interact with graduate students at a very, I guess, on a very close, at a very close interaction, and see how it is to work at a lab firsthand. So I emailed different universities across the United States, and I ended up working at the University of Colorado for 1.5 months after my sophomore year. And I think that that was one of the best opportunities I could have had, because it was just me as a high school student in a building full of really interested and passionate postgraduate students. And I was able to gain, of course, experience with the wet lab procedures and biochemistry procedures, but also kind of a theoretical background into the field and a research kind of mindset. And at the end, I was able to give a talk to all these lab members. So I guess that was a really amazing opportunity I would have never had without just reaching out, that kind of first step. Another interest that I had is languages. I kind of started that in 7th grade with Spanish. It was the first kind of language I learned, and I instantly fell in love. I loved the grammar, the mathematical nature of it, the analytical part of it. I loved the culture and everything. So I was so self-motivated. I guess I kept myself at least one textbook ahead of my classmates at all times. I was so interested in it. I was writing stories. I was kind of having conversations with my teachers, and I finished the curriculum in 3 years. So instead of 5. And I guess that was just because I was so interested in doing it that I was able to kind of motivate me to reach that goal. A similar thing kind of I did with German, language that I kind of self-studied, and I studied it, and I took the DSD2, which is the German language diploma, which kind of certifies you to study there. So I took that, and I'm recently learning Japanese, as Archana Auntie mentioned. So yeah, I guess that was another kind of way where I was really self-motivated. And one thing I'll definitely mention is when you do kind of follow one passion, it often leads you to find more passions that you have. For example, my interest in languages allowed me to explore public service, and especially public service with regards to different communities, which are often kind of separated from the main kind of, there are different communities in any country, and they're separated with a language barrier. So I kind of was able to bridge that gap via languages, and I volunteered at immigration institutes where I kind of taught American government and civics to Mexican and Central American immigrants to the United States. And I was actually an exchange student in Germany for a month, where I got to kind of break down my own prejudices and learn about the different cultures. So that was, I guess, a kind of brief summary of kind of my high school experience. The one thing I really want everyone to take away from this is, I guess, if you're really motivated and interested in pursuing new things to the depth that you kind of want to, I guess that's really great, and that'll definitely help you a lot, especially in the future and in college applications.
Thank you so much, Kushal. And so if we can move to the next slide. All right, so this is the group that Kushal collaborated with when he was writing his personal statement for colleges. And that brings me to the topic of collaboration. So when we have these wonderful self-motivated students, a good mentor would always try to bring some collaborative opportunities to the table for them. And collaboration is extremely effective, but it's not a new idea. A Russian teacher and psychologist, Lev Vygotsky, in 1962 first found that we learn better through our interactions with our peers and our mentors or teachers. And our social interaction influences our cognitive growth. So if we have many of these autonomous learners in a year, we try to put them together and allow them to help each other grow. So that's the picture of Kushal and his colleagues graduated and going to all wonderful colleges. But my next question is for Apurva, who has enjoyed collaboration since her high school days. And Apurva, can you talk about your collaborative experience briefly in high school, more in college and graduate school, and while starting your startup?
Yeah, definitely. So I'll start with high school. So as Archananti said, collaboration for me started when I was in high school. I was part of a robotics team, and that was literally what I did after school for like many hours. It was to the concern of my parents because I was like not actually working on schoolwork most of the time. But one of the reasons why I loved it so much was that it was giving me something that school never did, and that was interacting with a lot of my peers that came from different backgrounds. So the robotics program that I was a part of, it had two parts. One was the actual part of building the robot, and then the other part was all of the business around it. So like, how do you get enough money to actually get the parts for the robot? How do you design the PR necessary to kind of show your robot off at competitions? So something I learned there was how to work with other engineers who had various different expertise, but also how to explain maybe very technical topics to people that are not that technical so that they can actually get us funding. So that was the first time I kind of saw the power of collaboration. The second was when I went to school at Berkeley. So Berkeley was like my second home. I absolutely loved it there. The students there are super scrappy. They have such a can-do attitude, and if there's something wrong, if there's a problem, there's probably already 10 people working to fix it. So I can give you some examples, right? At a school like Berkeley, there's a ton of different courses all over the place. So the Berkeley students came together from various different disciplines, and they created a website that allows students to look up classes. They can find recommendations from other students. They can see averages of like the average grade that the class got. It has recommendations on when in your like college career to take a certain class, which professors to take it with. Like literally, if you wanted to find information on something, it was there. So that's just one example. And I think that really rubbed off on me and my classmates. And, I remember in my freshman year, we were tired of waiting in line for office hours. If many of you guys might know, like office hours are spaces where after class, you can kind of ask the teacher's assistant for questions. And, Berkeley is a really big school. The TA to student ratio is not great. Probably one office hours might have like 30 or 40 people, and then there's like one TA. So it's like a very natural environment for everyone to help each other out in their problems. And so, you can go to office hours and there could not be any TA, but maybe like 30% of the people will leave before the TA even comes because they've been able to solve problems just by talking to peers. So Berkeley was also a really nice environment for that. And I think Berkeley has gotten even more collaborative because there's a lot of startup culture now. Like there was some when I was there, but there's even more now. So I think that culture is only just, getting started and really growing. And then at Stanford, it was definitely very different from Cal, but there was still a lot of collaboration that happened. You can tell that it's very well funded, especially since we'd have like poster sessions and things after classes, and those kinds of events take a lot of money to throw. But one thing I am very grateful for Stanford was it was like the birthplace of my first startup. So like Archana Auntie said, I started a startup with a couple of my classmates. They come from different backgrounds, actually. One of my co-founders did his MBA at the Graduate School of Business. And then my other co-founder was from the School of Product Design. And we actually met over a spreadsheet while applying to one of the startup classes. And, I tell a lot of people that I feel like the only reason this actually ended up working and we were able to build a company and get it acquired within like 2 years was the fact that we were a very self-efficient co-founding team. Like business and sales was handled. I handled technology. And then we had product and design and marketing. So I think if it was like a bunch of CS people or a bunch of business people, there is no way we would have been able to do this. So I'm really grateful for all of the collaborative opportunities I've had. But I think one thing is there's always a way to reach out to people and make sure that your connections are collaborative instead of it being homogeneous to what you know. So, there's always a way to make your connections more diverse.
Thank you so much, Apurva, that no matter how many times you tell your story, I'm always inspired. Dhruv, the next question is for you. Can you tell us how or why bright students enjoy being with Lumiere mentors?
Yeah, of course. So I think a mentor needs to fulfill, broadly speaking, 3 criteria. The first is that they need to be, as Stephen mentioned earlier, someone who is an expert in the field, or at the very least, someone who has knowledge that you might not have before. And so that means that you respect them for their intellect. The second thing they need to do is that they need to be putting in the work. So a mentor who is lackadaisical, does not respond to your emails, is kind of hard to reach, that's a mentor that you're unlikely to have a deep connection with, because you don't feel like this person cares about you. And it also doesn't feel like this person is putting in the work that matches up to the level of enthusiasm and hard work that you're putting in. And third and finally, the mentor needs to be someone who, of course, I think is someone who is far more advanced than you in the field, but at the same time is someone that you can kind of see yourself in, and that you can realistically think, okay, if I put in the work, if I put in the effort, I can be this person someday. And the reciprocal sort of thing about that is it helps for this mentor to understand where you're coming from and where they can see themselves in you as a mentee. And so I think all 3 of those criteria are something that we really look for in our Lumiere mentors. And so the way it's structured is that we have high school students from around the world working with PhD students at sort of top research universities. So by virtue of being PhD students at these universities, they're already incredibly skilled in their fields. And so there's someone that the students respect intellectually. By virtue of our selection process and sort of the training we give them, we ensure that they are responsive and communicative and engaging. And I think that's something that our selection process chooses for as well. Because let's be honest, not all graduate students and PhD candidates are on top of their emails and responsiveness, and this could very easily fall to the side. But it's a third thing that I think that really sets this experience apart, at least, and that's what we found in conversations with alumni and students. Still remember a call with a student who said, yeah, I thought that I'd enjoy working with my mentor, but I didn't think that my mentor would be hip. And so that's sort of the reaction that students have, which is that this is someone who is definitely, a decade older than them, but not so far removed from the experience of being a new researcher, of being a high school student, that it's someone who is totally separate from their experience. And so having someone that you can connect with, who you have common experiences with, who you see yourself in, I think is a really valuable part of that mentorship experience, and something that students and mentors really enjoy. So I'd say those are the aspects of being a mentor that we try to inculcate. And I don't know if, Archana, if there have been other aspects of mentorship that have been important in your experience, but those are the ones that stand out to me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And then moving on to the next slide. So let me segue into, you brought up this nice topic. And, as my students go from high school to college, mentors start playing a huge role. So this is the 2019 Gallup Poll. And if you can see the figures on the left, the first section, right? These are the 6 college experiences that are linked to student success. So we are now moving from talent to development of skills to being successful. And these are the 6 experiences that are important, as Dhruv said. The first part is about the encouragement and support that students receive from their professors and mentors. They take that and they grow with that. The second part is about the hands-on experience. So Lumiere tries to do both, but early on, not wait for college years and do it in high school. Some of my self-motivated, again, autonomous students like Kushal and Apurva, they're designing their own theme. And, the thought process is, why wait for college? I can have all 6 experiences nailed early on in high school. And with that token, my next question is for Kushal, who's just entered college. Kushal, did you have mentors who inspired you, and how did they help you grow?
Yeah, of course. So I think that the number one mentor that I had throughout high school was definitely my Spanish teacher. My Spanish teacher would always help me she provided me the resources that I needed to, I guess, advance my Spanish studies, which I hadn't really received in the past. In the past, all I received was, I guess, teachers annoyed that I was trying to go ahead of, I guess, what they were teaching. But my Spanish teacher, I guess, she stayed there with me after class and things like that. And she would have conversations with me. She kind of treated me like another one of their AP advanced placement, I guess, the highest level of Spanish students. And I really appreciated that. It kind of meant so much to me that someone was believing in me. And it kind of motivated me to study different languages, because I knew that I had that kind of support from her. I think that was one of the number one mentors that I had, because I met her in 10th grade. Some other mentors that I definitely had were at Colorado. I worked under a postgraduate student named Tim Decker, and he was very interesting as well. He, of course, did a lot of the wet lab procedures with me, and I guess mentored me in doing those. But he also kind of motivated me to think theoretically about everything, kind of think about what the thought process of doing this in this order is, and kind of think like a researcher. I never really got that experience thinking about why I'm doing it instead of how to do it. So that was another example where I kind of received that mentorship. And of course, my family, I think, is definitely to be thanked. I think they really, of course, I got a lot of guidance from my family, but the number one thing that I really appreciate from them is the freedom to kind of pursue what I want, because I guess that's really important, that a student kind of is independent with what they're interested in, and that they have the freedom to pursue what they wish to the very end, if they're interested in it. So I think that all of those are definitely some mentors that I've had over the years. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Kushal. And Kushal's mom is also my colleague. I mentored her to get started in college advising. So we have a good team there. And I love the fact that my students think of me as someone whom they can collaborate with. Many of them just call me just Archana or Archana auntie, and it's so endearing. I'm so grateful for this experience. Apurva, my next question is for you. You're among the top 2%. If you look at that graph, only 2% of the college graduates will hit the nail on all 6 categories, right? And you likely did that. So what was your experience with your hands-on learning experiences and your own mentors?
Yeah, definitely happy to talk about that. I think one thing with mentors is that for me in my life, they've helped me a lot whenever there's been like a first time of doing something. So, even starting at high school when I was doing robotics, I was leading part of the development of the robot. It was the first time of me leading anything in my life. So the fact that I had my robotics mentor to kind of help me walk through it and teach me not only like tactically what to do, but also things like time management and people skills and like how to talk to people were really, really helpful. And the fact that I was able to do it with him at the same time of actually applying some of the skills that he was teaching me like live really, really helped because it ended up being very hands-on and very tactical in that sense. And then at Berkeley, there was also a program that I attended, and it was research on a topic I'd never even heard of. It was like electrophotonics, and I mean, I've forgotten part of it by now, but it was definitely a new field for me then. And then again, there was a lot of mentors when it came to the graduate students I was working with or the professors I was working with that, trusted me enough, first of all, to actually be able to grasp what they were saying, but also they were able to guide me in like learning this new first in terms of the field that I was trying to pick up. And then finally at Stanford, it was the first time I was doing any kind of machine learning. So the fact that I had my PhD mentor help me and teach me about like, how do you train models? Like, how do you even formulate an AI problem has helped me so much. Like, I definitely don't think I'd be where I am today without his help in that. And again, in all of these experiences, I was doing as well as learning at the same time. And so I think doing that in tandem really, really helped. And I think there was a couple lessons around mentorship that I've kind of learned. One is that there's mentors everywhere. Like, I think LinkedIn has been a platform I've been using a lot more, and it's just incredible the response rate that you get from people when you just reach out. And the other thing is, I used to think that mentors had to be like the best in their fields and everything, but I've actually found that I've gotten the best advice from people that are just a couple years ahead of where I am today. They're a couple levels higher. It's like where I aspire to be in like 3 years or 4 years, because they've kind of just been there and done that. So their advice is a lot more useful and tactical than like if I asked Sundar Pichai something, So that was another piece of advice. Let's see. And the other one is that when you have people like mentors who like believe in you more than you believe in yourself, I think it ends up being like a self-fulfilling prophecy, because it's like, oh yeah, someone thinks I can do it, so I probably can. And then you'll try your best to kind of achieve it. And even if you miss a little bit, you still end up going pretty far. And now with Smartly, I'm so grateful to have mentors and engineering leadership mentors that I can lean on because it's my first time leading an engineering org, first time in a bigger company. So I'm really grateful, and I'm trying to give back as much as I can as well, like part of the SWE mentorship network and the alumni mentorship network. So at least I can help people maybe who are in college or in high school.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Apurva. And so, Stephen, my next question is for you. How do you think Lumiere can help our students with a smooth transition into college? What is the value that you provide?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think to just step back, I'm not even sure if we describe this, but what Lumiere does is we help students work one-on-one with a research mentor, develop an independent research paper. And so when we think about that smooth transition, I think about that in kind of three main buckets. The first bucket is the academic, of course. And I think that one of the things that students can get the opportunity to do if they're, they're incredibly enterprising like Kushal, but most students don't, is this opportunity to really build something of your own. And as you go throughout college, you're often working towards something might be a senior thesis or something that you're building yourself. In the case of someone like Apurva, perhaps you're building a company to be acquired, who knows, but you're working towards building something. And the experience of being pushed to create something yourself is one that students often don't have until they enter into a university itself. And so one of the experiences of Lumiere is about asking a student to do something that's really hard, which is to create a project, in this case, a research project that they do independently. So I think academically, students are set up for success because they already know what it takes. They have a rep, if you will, in the process of building something new that they don't have that, kind of that hand-holding process for. The second thing I think is socially, and I think, to Apurva's great point about mentors, it is, and Arjun, what you're saying as well, so much of, I think, getting to that six, that you're describing, these 6 questions being about, do I have someone who cares about me? Do I have someone who supports me? Is not just about a faculty member showing an interest in you, but also you showing an interest in a faculty member and actually treating them like a person as opposed to a kind of glorified object in the distance. And I think, to Dhruva's point earlier, a big part of that is about humanizing someone and saying, I know what a PhD student is like. And because I worked with them and, like Kushal talked about the student, that PhD student that he worked with, maybe they're great in some ways and maybe they're, not the best in other ways. Like I know students who work with me think that, Steven's, I'm sure, very good at the research I do, but he's much worse than me at, showing up at a Zoom meeting exactly on time or whatever it is. And so it's key to humanize the people that you're working with. And I just think the final one is research itself is a big part of the college experience, being able to learn and to create something as opposed to just absorbing something. And so I think for students to get early exposure to that is quite valuable. And so there's a big connection, we think, between doing this type of research project early on and being successful in the college process.
And I think that students also learn how to self-advocate after they have been with a program
Absolutely.
like Lumiere. They know exactly what to go looking for once they enter college. So it's not a late start for them. Thank you so much for that
Absolutely.
answer. And can we please move on to the next slide? All right. So what's our mantra here is to explore, engage, and enjoy. That's what we tell our students. Explore, then get engaged in the process and enjoy. So we have defined that these are the 3 essential steps for almost all autonomous learners or self-motivated students who are willing to take the risk, create those opportunities for themselves. And with that, I have my last question for Dhruva. Dhruva, you're one of the mentors also at Lumiere. And what are your tips or what is your mantra for the next generation?
Yeah, I think the best way to think about how to identify the talents in the next generation and nurture them is to compare a couple of experiences that I've had. So I grew up in Chennai, went to the same school from pre-KG till 12th standard, and it was a very strong school academically, but it was sort of your typical CBSE school that you have where every class that I was in was had at least 40 students in it. The teachers were putting in incredible amounts of hard work, but were pulled were stretched thin by the resources they had and the students they had. And so what I noticed was that the way that students sort of came to the top was one of 2 ways. It was either through testing. So you did very well on school tests and exams. You consistently got 95%, 98%, whatever it is, and you came to the notice of teachers, or it was through your own initiative. And so you raised your hand and you got selected to go to debate competitions and quiz competitions and drama competitions. And that fit me well because I was doing well in school and I was extroverted and I was confident and I was able to advocate for myself for all of these opportunities. That system doesn't work necessarily for all students and certainly not for all talented and gifted students. And I shudder to think at how many students there are who may be more introverted, who may have talents that were not identified by the system, who, you know, in the hardest cases have learning or other disabilities that were not identified by the education system that we currently have in this country. And I want to contrast that. So before I started Lumiere, I was involved with the Indian debating team for over a decade. And so I was on the team myself. And then over the last 5 years, I've been involved in setting up the national network of debating competitions that are used to select and train the national team. And this involves looking through thousands of students who apply for the national team and constructing a selection process that identifies talent and nurtures them. And I think the way that we've tried to do that there has been really interesting. And how I'm confident that that process is effective is in 2019, after 10 years of the team of India being represented at the World Championships, India finally won the World Schools Debating Championships. And that team in 2019 had 5 kids on it who were exceptional, but one of the kids was fully blind. He's now a freshman at Stanford who's just finishing up his first year. We had 2 incredible young women who faced all sorts of barriers in being able to be taken seriously in a very male-dominated competition and being allowed to participate and so on. We had a student with mental health issues stemming from a traumatic childhood incident that affected him at the competition. And so these were all students who, in a traditional system, may not have been recognized to the extent that they really deserved, in the sense that they were clearly the best in the world at this activity. And so what we had to do in order to recognize and identify these students and then train them was to think about talent and giftedness in a diversity of perspectives. And so when we were selecting these students, we would definitely have quizzes and tests where we tested their knowledge. We would sit in on the rooms in which the students were preparing together and see how they interacted with each other. We would look at how they did in workshops. And in particular, we would look at growth from day 1 of workshops to day 5 of workshops to see how things changed rather than the success that they had at the end. And of course, we would see them in debates as well. And in debates, we would be trying to see not just how they spoke when they were up on stage, but how did they interact with their teammates when they're sitting down on the side at their table. How did they pass notes to each other? How were they thinking about giving credit to others where credit was due? So using all of these, we were able to identify students that I think represented a much more diverse set of backgrounds than a traditional process of saying, we're going to pick the students who test the best, or we're going to pick the most confident students would. And those are the learnings that we try to pull into Lumiere as well. And that for Lumiere, we have a written application and then an interview process. But unlike the Indian education system, the goal of this process is not to screen or to intimidate students, but rather it's an inquisitive process, in that we're trying to learn more about the student, learn about their strengths, make it a comfortable environment for them to put their best foot forward, so that we can try and identify. There's some students who are confident and exceptional that will kill it from day 1. There are others who are a little bit nervous but have a ton of potential. There are others for whom interviews might not be where they perform at all, and rather their knowledge might come through the work that they do. So I think recognizing that there's a diverse set of gifted and talented students, and we need to be adapting our selection and identification procedures to recognize that level of diversity, I think is one of the core challenges that we face in dealing with the next generation of students, but one that I hope initiatives like this, like STEM in a Box, like Lumiere can all go some way in helping students succeed. So I'll pause there, and thank you guys all so much for this opportunity, and I'm looking forward to some questions and answers.
All right, with that, we move on to our last slide. Thank you. My wonderful panel has put their insights and their thoughts and their experiences out there. And I have tried to share some of my experiences. So with that, we'll wrap up our presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Archana, for a very good presentation, I would say this was the first of its kind, at least on this particular platform, where we had a speaker and we also had, the students and the younger generation participating together. So thanks a lot for setting up a new tone to PIC platform. Equally, I would
And
like
Dr.
to thank
Kale, I would recommend that these young speakers be called again to do their own
Sure.
topic.
Sure,
Because they're all so accomplished that.
Yes. In fact, I was about to say that they look so young, and if you look at them and then their accomplishments, it's really nice to see it. Typically on an Indian platform, where and nowadays there's a good emphasis on entrepreneurship and startups and things like that. Mostly, what happens is that we have the table turned in the other way, and mostly the mentors are going to tell that what do they expect the entrepreneurship qualities to be for a student. But it was nice to see that what do the young entrepreneurs think, as what do they want from the mentors. So it was a wonderful session. I should thank each one of you for this particular session, where nice thoughts came up from individual students and entrepreneurs, I would say. Thanks a lot. There are questions. There are a couple of questions. I'll take them one by one. So the first question is from Mr. Sujit Sanjigiri. He's asking, autonomous learners often get dropped out of the standard selection process, like SAT, for example. How do we ensure that we don't lose them to the system? It's a very good question, and I'm sure this will be a question of many who are attending. So yeah,
And that's where I believe that mentors have a bigger role to play. And I'm so grateful that when Lumiere interviews my students, they are not necessarily harping on the standardized scores or test scores when they're matching them with the mentors. Here, at least in the US, I have seen opportunities come to students who are the go-getters. I don't think much has to do with their test scores or anything. Of course, unless you apply to those big national programs where everything is based on testing and numbers. I don't know, Dhruv, do you have any other thoughts to that?
Yeah, actually, so I think unlike Apurva and Kushal and I think Stephen was a bit more of a naughtier child. So I do want to pass it to him, because I think his experience of his talent being recognized came a little bit later in the school experience. So Stephen, I want to pass it over to you.
Yeah, I think, I really appreciate that question. And certainly, I think maybe, different from Purva and Kushal. I was certainly not the best student in my class. And growing up, I was, in fact, one of the worst. In my Spanish class, to kind of frame it differently from Kushal, I was sent out of my Spanish class 78 times over the course of the year for misbehaving over the course of Spanish. So my Spanish teacher and I did not have a good relationship. One of the things that changed for me was having a mentor, to Archana's point, who in my ninth grade essentially told me that he thought I wasn't doing enough to I wasn't living up to my potential. Essentially, I wanted to take this AP class. He said, Steve, I don't think you're ready. You're not putting your mind into it. This is in this school is like the thing to do. And he made me think. He really hurt me in a way, because I thought that I was this hotshot kid, and he said, you're not. You're actually not living at all up to your own potential. And that was a really pivotal moment for me. It made me rethink, how should I be spending my time as someone who's very autonomous. I was a class clown because I just was bored in school, wanted to have fun, I wanted to entertain myself. And I thought, how could I reframe my own energies towards something that was valuable? And that's why I focused so much on school and then focused on standardized tests, because someone said, hey, what you're doing is it's not going to help you out down the line. And I can't help you in that process. You need to rethink how you're using your own autonomous energy. So I do think, to Dr. Archana's point, it is so much about having the mentors who provide a role model for you, who can change your direction in how you're using your own energies.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. The next question is by Mr. Vilas Rajwade. He says wonderful session so far. So for you, Archana, what would be your best advice to me? I'm a 73 plus year age, immersed in development of talent for taking the younger generation in a better way. It's a nice question also.
I would say just believe in your students. When they come to you, just believe in them and just spend time talking to them. Just spend informal time with them. My students, when they come to the office, they sometimes I mean, some of my colleagues will say they talk crap. That's okay. I welcome that. No topic should be off limits. Just spending time with your students is where you get to inspire them. And you will know because you have to be able to read between the lines. And I think at 73, you are more experienced than I am. So you probably can read better between the lines than I can. And I would be the one who would want to learn from you.
Yeah, I would believe that in every age one can be a student. So one can learn from a kid and also from anybody. Okay, so with our next question is by Mr. Ramesh Deshpande. Have you looked into the new education policy (NEP) of Government of India, which addresses different problems in higher education system? He has put down all those problems, but I would just restrict the question as do you have any comments on the recent NEP of Government of India, which is in 2020, they have released the new policy.
Actually, this is all you.
It is such a comprehensive policy, and I'm like a tiny little contributor to some of the things that we said. But the way they are looking at higher education, it's really getting revamped. I like how they have borrowed from different educational systems across the world in the policy. That I found was extremely impressive. And although I am an advocate for the gifted and talented students, I also like how the policy is a lot more about access for everyone and how it focuses on development of every single student. So in a phase where our education is really in very fast developmental stages, I think the policy, I mean, there are some gray areas and there are some darker areas which I wish had been addressed better. But overall, if you just look at the holistic picture, I feel that, it's really upwardly bound.
Yeah, true that. Next question is by Namita Joshi to all panelists and especially to Dhruv. She is asking, you mentioned that in the process, inquisitiveness and grade testing is not a focal point for selection process. Could you throw some more light on what kind of aspects in a student you look for?
Yeah, I love that question. And this is something that we put a lot of thought into. And I think there's three big things that we look for. One is intellectual curiosity and that sort of excitement about learning. So we want to make sure that the students who are in the program are actually there because they really think deeply about a field and are interested in it and are hungry to learn more about it. So that's the first thing. It doesn't mean that you need to be an expert in the field already, but that you put some thought into it and you find yourself energized when you're thinking about this topic. The second thing we're looking for is drive and willingness to put in the work. So if a student is unwilling to put in the work or stick with the project, there's very little that we can do. We can take the horse to the water, but drinking is harder. And so we're looking for students who have that sort of initiative and ability to put in 5 to 10 hours of work independently each week. And finally, we're looking for students who are fun to work with. So we do want this to be a good experience for the students and the mentors. So if this is a student who is taking an opportunity for granted or who is rude, those are not characteristics that we think, even in the most brilliant students, should be tolerated. And so we try to look for students with whom who are looking to positively engage and who are looking to have a good experience with their mentor and with the rest of the students, really. So I'd say those are some of the characteristics we look for, and we found that the students that we've got, we're very happy with overall.
Thank you, Dhruv.
Thank you.
So there are a lot of other comments and chat in the chat box. All of you can see people have really loved this seminar because of the speaker, of course, Dr. Archana, and also because of the presence of the young crowd here. So let me thank all of you for a wonderful session. Any comments from anybody? Okay, sir.
I think the credit all goes to the panelists, and I think I have wonderful students and colleagues. And thank you, Dr. Kai, for organizing this once again. Wonderful people attending here today. I'm really grateful that you're here to, really celebrate these students, wonderful students and accomplished peers of mine. Thank you so
and
much.
Dr. Archana, I should say that the comment that I will always remember from Apurva is that she said that they would always look for the mentors who are just senior to them. That is a very interesting point, because she says is a good point that we tend to forget, what we did like let's say 15 years back, but somebody won't forget what they've done a couple of years back. So that's also a very good point that she mentioned. Wonderful session, and let me thank on behalf of PIC and all the panelists from Pune International Center to all of you for a wonderful session. Thanks a lot. And I'll just quickly, before we complete the session today, I'll just tell about the upcoming event of PIC. We have a discussion on a research paper which will be given by Professor Arvind Subramaniam. It's entitled Three New Estimates on India's All-Cause Excess Mortality During the COVID Pandemic. This event will take place on 25th of August, that is coming Wednesday at 6 o'clock. And it will be chaired by Professor Ajib Kembavi, who is the principal investigator from PKC, that is Pune Knowledge Cluster, and is a professor emeritus of IUCA. So this is an upcoming event of PIC. With this, I would like to thank all the panelists, the speaker, and everybody who were attending this particular talk. Thanks a lot, and bye-bye.